Hi everyone, I'm Ermias Nivat and welcome to G-Code Makers classes. Here we will guide you through mastering your machines and your software, helping you develop valuable skills and get your machines and designs going. So let's get to it. This is the SD card holder that we're going to be creating. So it can take 3 micro SD cards, 3 normal sized SD cards, 1, 2 and 3, and then 3 USB sticks. So let's get to it. This is what our workspace would look like when we are finished. This is the SD card holder that I've already created, and this is what it would look like. The functions or the tools we're going to use today in our toolbar is Create Sketch, Extrude, Chamfer, Draft, and also within our Create Sketch we also have functions that we're going to use, and these functions are line, construction line, rectangle, rectangular pattern, mirror, and offset. Just a little something before we begin with creating a new sketch and a new design and all of these little things. I want to show you a big thing that we need to consider when creating stuff like this. So always consider making a tolerance for everything that we create, and you'll understand why when we get later in our sketch when I show you how we're going to do this. So an important part is, if you look at our SD card holder, if I take out my SD card, it comes out quite easily and it sits real snug, it doesn't easily fall out. But when it comes to my SD card, I made these purposefully smaller just to show you. Your SD card would sit too tight. So we always need to take into consideration adding a little tolerance around whatever it is that we create. I just wanted to clarify that before we move on. Okay, so let's get to designing. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a new design at our top right in our workspace. We click on it, so new design. We're gonna create a new sketch, and when we click on create new sketch, we will be greeted by 3 different planes. We have our top and bottom plane, rear and front plane, left and right plane, or the x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. It's also indicated by our view cube, as you can see on the right hand side. You can also use this cube to snap your views, so you can click on front, you can do a 45 degree snap and a top snap. We're going to work with our top view, so we're going to snap to our top part of our cube, and we're going to click on our plane here. So you can move your camera around and you'll see it's that bottom plane. And the first measurement that we're going to use is our SD card's size. So what I would suggest is pressing R for rectangle, and then we're going to see in our sketch palette and at the right hand side we can use a center rectangle. You'll also see that your rectangles would be selected at the top. So if you go and create rectangle, you have 2-point rectangle, 3-point rectangle and center rectangle. We're going to use the center rectangle today. At our middle of our sketch, you'll see our lines intersecting and a circle. We're going to let our dot just snap, and we click and drag out. Just normal click and drag out. And then we're going to measure our SD card. Okay, so we take our SD card and we take our vernier and we just measure our SD card. And we are getting around 24 millimeters. We're going to measure the thickness at 2 millimeters. Okay, great. So if we move over to our main sketch, so now we're going to insert our values. Our top value is going to be 2.5 and our side value is going to be 24.5. So we press tab and we're going to press 24.5. Press enter. Just like that. We're adding 0.5 millimeter as a tolerance, as I just explained. So now we're going to press L and then we're going to press X for construction. In our sketch palette you'll see that construction is highlighted, and in our toolbar you'll see that line is highlighted. So at our bottom right corner of our rectangle, I'm going to click and drag it out by 10 millimeters. 10 millimeters is more than enough space for your fingers to get in between the SD cards. You can always change this value in the future. So what we're going to do now is press R for rectangle and deselect construction by pressing X. We're going to click on this dot, click and drag out. The beauty of having a rectangle before is that we can just snap our height to the previous rectangle's height. As you can see, it makes this blue snap line, and we can just hover over that snap line, drag it to this side, and we're going to make the thickness at 2.5. And we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to do L for line, X for construction line, our bottom left corner, click and drag out by 10 millimeters. We're going to press R for rectangle, and just to show you what's the difference between construction lines and solid lines, I'm just going to do a construction line rectangle. You don't have to follow along with this part, I just want to show you the difference between the two. And then I'm going to extrude, so I'm going to press E just to show you, and I'm going to click on that rectangle. As you can see, these rectangles I can click on, but this construction rectangle I cannot click on, and I can extrude these two but not this one. That's why we use construction lines. When we get into more complicated designs, this would make even more sense, but for now that was just to show you. So what you can do now is just press R and make sure that construction is deselected, click on this dot, drag it to the top of that rectangle, and make sure it is 2.5. Make sure that your rectangles are on the outside of our 10 millimeter line, just like that. Next we're going to do the slots for our USB. So we move to the top, and we're going to find this rectangle that we first made, and we're going to find the center of it. What's nice is if you press L for line and making sure construction is selected, we're going to find the middle of this line. By hovering over this line, it would snap to the middle and indicate it with the triangle that it is in the middle. So we click and drag it out, and we're going to make this 10 millimeters. We're also going to use a rectangle now, the center rectangle, so we press R and we deselect construction by pressing X, and we're going to use our center rectangle, go to the top of our dot, click and drag out. Now we measure our stick. So if we look at our stick, this is our first size, it's at 12 millimeters. And what is our next one? It is 4.5. So on our sketch, we're going to make this 12.5 at the top, and at the side 5. This adds our 5 millimeter tolerance. To make sure my sizes are correct, what I'm going to do now is press L for line again, and we're going to press X in the bottom right corner of our rectangle, click and drag it out by 8 millimeters. Just like that. But what we're going to use now is rectangular pattern. When using advanced or making advanced sketches, using rectangular pattern can really help. So what we're going to do now is click on rectangular pattern. If it's not in your toolbar, you can go to create, and you'll see it in your toolbar. You can hover over it and click on the 3 dots at the right side, and you can pin it to your toolbar. And then it will be in your toolbar. So let's get back to it. So now we have our rectangular pattern selected. We double click on any of these lines of this rectangle to select all of these lines, just like that. If you click and drag it out, you'll see a value that's added. So it's 14, it's 17, 18, whatever the value is. We can indicate what axis we're using right now. So in our rectangular pattern, as you can see, it shows quantity 3 and distance 20. If you move it, it shows 18. So this is our axis that we're working on. What we're going to do underneath that, instead of one direction, because it only makes a pattern to the one direction, we need to make it symmetrical. So we click on one direction, symmetric, and as you can see, it's symmetrical. If we zoom in, we can just drag it to where that dot is, and that would give us the distance that we need in between. We can press OK, and these are quickly made and done. So now we can move on to our micro SD cards, and we can go to our bottom, we click L again, we press X, and we find the center of our line, just like at the top. Click on it, drag it down by 10 millimeters. As you can see, I made it a solid line. You can just click on the line, press X, and it would make it a construction line. So we can press R for rectangle, and we can go to center rectangle. We click on a dot, and we just drag it out. Looking at our micro SD card, we take our vernier and we measure again, and as you can see, we are at 11, and our thickness, we are at 0.8 millimeters indicated by our dial. So 0.8 millimeters. So we need to add 0.5, and that works out at 1.3 millimeters. Okay, so let's add in our values. Our top value, it's going to be 12 or 11.5 because we measured it at 11. So it's 11.5, and our thickness is going to be 1.3. That's 0.8 plus 0.5 is 1.3. Just like that. And now we're going to use a line again. So we're pressing L, pressing X, bottom right corner, click and drag out by 8 millimeters. And we're going to create a rectangle, because I'm going to show you how to use mirror. So we have our 2-point rectangle. We're going to press X to deselect construction, click, and hover over our previous rectangle top line. It makes our snap line. Just make sure it's at 1.3, and we're going to make it 11.5. What we can do now is at our top, we can click on mirror. Same as before with rectangular pattern, if it's not up here, you can just go to create, and you can find mirror, and you can click on it and add it to your toolbar. So let's click on mirror, we double click on this rectangle, and we click on the center line, and we press OK, and we are done with that. Make sure that your sketch looks like this. Let me just zoom in like that, just like that. Okay, so now our next function that we're going to use is offsets. The reason we're going to use offsets, we need about, my opinion, with this design, you can use less, but just to make sure that our chamfers look good, we're going to use an offset of 3 millimeters. So this 3 millimeter offset is going to make quite the difference. It's going to be that's what I usually use when I do 3D printing. So my offset's usually about 3 millimeters. This makes sure that my component is strong enough to withstand normal wear and tear. but you can make it smaller, 1.2. I wouldn't go smaller than 0.8 millimeters, but just to show you how chamfer is going to work, we're going to do an offset of 3 millimeters. So let's get to it. And what we're going to do now is just press O for offset, and as you can see, offset is selected at our top. Same as always, you can just go down and you can look at offset and you can pin it. You'll also see different type of functions have shortcuts, but not all of them have shortcuts. But we're going to use offset, and we're going to offset all of our rectangles now. So as you can see, this rectangle has an offset of 1, and we're going to make it -3, just like that. When your value is too small, you will get an error. So when you go over your SD cards rectangle, you click on it and you make it smaller than the value available, it would give an error. Just make sure that you make it bigger. So we're still going to make this 3 millimeters, and I'm going to do this with all of them. So let's do that. And that's what it would look like when you're done. And now we need to connect this to make our basic shape. So make sure yours look like this, and then we're going to press L. And we're going to make our basic shape. So we're going to make an outline. We're going to connect all of our outside lines. So at our top rectangle, at our bottom of it, at the left side, we're going to click and drag it out to the top of this rectangle. And we're going to continue doing this. Just connect all of our rectangles. As you can see, that one, oh no, it's perfectly connected. And when we connect this last one, we will be able to extrude the whole thing. Just like that. We can select that, and we can select our individual slots. Make sure yours look like this. So this sketch is going to have a lot of detail. It already has quite a bit of detail, but we're going to add just the last part to it. So these slots are going to have too much plastic in between. We're wasting plastic. So what we're going to do now, because if I extrude it, just to show you, we select all of our rectangles. It's just going to be a really big solid block. And these lines in between have too much plastic. It would just be a waste. So what we're going to do now is press R for rectangle, and we're going to find this SD card slot of ours. At our offset, we're going to just use our snap line and go to the top, and we're going to drag it down to our center offset, and we're going to drag it down like that. We snap our lines, we drag it down. So we add a rectangle on this side, and we're going to add a rectangle on this side. And just to make sure that these divisions that we just added do not get confused as slots, we're just going to make a line in the center of them as well. So we're going to press L again, and we're going to find the middle. So as we can see, our dot is here, so that's in the middle. We click and drag out, and we can do the same on this side. Click and we drag out, and yours should be able to do that. And now we're going to press R for rectangle, center rectangle, and at our center line we're going to find the center that this line that we just made. We find the center to it, click and drag it out, and we're going to make it 3 millimeters thick. And we're going to do the same on this side. So we're going to make it 3 millimeters thick. Just like that, make it 3 millimeters. If you are confused, don't worry. I'll show you now what we mean by adding these center lines. So if you struggle with this, just continue on. You don't have to add it yet. You can always go back in the video and add this. But I'll extrude it now so you can see what I mean by what we just did. So I'm going to press E to extrude. And we can extrude our block. So we're going to select all of these lines. And the center line. And these lines. These are the lines that needs to be selected. And also this part. So make sure you selected everything just like that. And we're going to extrude this by, let's look at our stick. We can do 10 millimeters. 10 millimeters would be enough. So at that moment, that's 10 millimeters. So let's do that. Just like that. Yours should look like this right now. To ensure that our SD cards does not fall through, as you can see they are open, so our SD cards might fall through. What we're going to do now is just click on our bottom. We're going to click on sketch, create sketch. And all of these rectangles we're going to extrude. So what we're going to do now is press E and click on all of these rectangles, leaving only these 4 open. If you click on this face, don't worry, you can just click on it again to deselect it. Just like that. And we're going to extrude it by -2. That means it's going to close up these holes. You can just make sure that in our extrude function that operation says join. And we're going to press OK. What we're going to do now is use our draft function. I want to keep the top surface flat. So what we're going to do is just draft our bottom piece. So we're going to click on draft. We're going to click on our front face. And we're going to click on our bottom face. And we can snap our view to the left side, and we can use the slider to choose a angle. I'm going to do 10 degrees. So you can just press 10 degrees and press enter. As you can see, if we would naturally put this object on a flat surface, this is not the way it would be. So what we're going to do now is just use our move function. And we're going to click on this bottom line, just like that. And we can snap to our left view again. And we're just going to angle it at 10 degrees again, since we drafted it at 10 degrees. And our object should look like this. Like that. So you can double click your mouse, your middle mouse button, and it would snap your view automatically. It's nice if you lose your object, you can just double click on your middle mouse button. Okay, so second to last step would be to add chamfers to our object. So I'm going to do 2 chamfers, 2 functions. We're going to click on our top and bottom faces, and we're going to say 1, and I'm going to make another chamfer. But I'm going to start with these rectangles in the middle. So we click on these. You don't have to look at the line directly like this. You can actually imagine where it sits, and you can just click on it. Same with this. So you just think of where it sits and you can click on it. And this one might be there. Now we do this with all of these. If you select the wrong surface, just click on it again to deselect. We're gonna do all 4 of these rectangles. Click on them. And we're gonna do all of the outside lines, so all of these angles. Sometimes you can select the wrong faces. You can just move on and deselect them. Just like that. Now we press 1. And that would chamfer all of our lines. You can just go over it and make sure that all of your lines are chamfered. The reason I chose 3 millimeters of an offset is to leave 1 millimeter of space in between. This means when we 3D print this object that we have enough to stick to the bed and not have problems with it 3D printing. Now that was our second to last function. Now our last one is just to color it in. So we're going to press A for appearance, and it would open up appearance tab, and we can go and look at different colors. So you can search plastic and it would show different plastic colors. I like ABS white, I'll put that on. And what I'm going to do now is going to make it a custom color. I like turquoise. So I'm going to right click on this ABS white. I'm going to edit it. And at our RGB, I'm just going to make it 48, 213, and 200. That's a turquoise color. And then we are done with that. We're done with Fusion 360. We can move on to using our slicer. So yours should look like this. Before we go into our slicer, we need to save our object. So what we're going to do now, we're going to utilities at our top. We're going to 3D print. And we're going to deselect send to 3D print utility. I would always suggest saving your objects before you send them to a 3D slicer. If something happens to your file, you always have a backup. So we're just going to click on it. I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to click on save to my computer. I'm going to click on these 3 dots. And I'm going to my desktop. And I'm going to my Skool folder. I have a Skool folder. In my Skool folder, I have different projects that I'm busy with. So we're going into SD card holder. And in my SD card holder, I have screenshots of the object and I have my STL file. In my STL file, I would save it. So you can just save it as SD card holder. And then you can click save. I'm not going to save it. I've already saved it. And then you can just save. I'm just going to cancel. Okay, so let's move on to our slicer. Okay, so now we are in our slicer. What we're going to do now is just going to open our file. I'm going to my Skool file. And I'm opening my SD card holder. As you can see, here's my SD card holder. The way it's seated now, it's perfect for me. I like it to have these steps at the top. It makes it actually look cool. So what I would suggest, is going into your settings. You can make it at 0.2 millimeters. The layer height shell, I'm not going to change anything. Info, you can do it at 10%, that's more than enough. Speed, I'm going to keep it stock, it just depends on what type of machine you're using. Supports, we're going to remove. Material, it all just depends on what material you're using. If you're using PETG, the temperatures will be higher. So usually I print at about 245 degrees with PETG at a bed temperature of 80. Cooling 100%, again if it's PETG you do it at about 40%. And the rest are good. Bolt plate adhesion I'm just gonna remove, so we're gonna do none. If you have first layer issues, you can add a brim, it might print better, but to be honest there's more than enough plastic for it to stick. You can always flip it if you want the top to be smooth and a bottom to have the steps, so we can just change our orientation to that, but I like it as it was. So we just click on the object again, just like that. Then we can click slice, and that's what it would look like. It would take about an hour and 6 minutes to print on my printer. That's what it would look like. So now all you can do is just export it locally to your SD card or whatever you're using. So I'll see if my SD card's gonna be working good. So now we can do export local, and we just find our USB drive and we save it to our USB drive. And then we can move on to our 3D printer. Okay, just to show you what I mean by steps, these are the steps that I'm talking about. Now I actually like how this SD card looks with these steps. I think it gives it a bit of character and it looks good. But you can always flip it around, and as you can see our bottom texture looks like this because our bed texture looks the same. So you can always flip this object like I showed, and this surface would be at the top and it would be smooth, but your bottom surface will have those steps. It always is about how you want to print it, how you want it to look, but it's all up to you. As I said, I love it looking like this. It gives it a bit of character, and you wouldn't, when injection molding things, it wouldn't come out like this. It wouldn't have these type of, you know, character to it. So yeah. Thank you for watching today's G-Code Makers classes. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it useful. If you found it useful, please go to our testimonial page and leave your experience there. Otherwise, you can go to our Skool community and ask questions there and post your results as well. Thanks again for watching and have a Makers Day.